All right, without any further ado, I'm exactly on time. Panel, you should be proud of me. 12:05, we're getting to the fun stuff. I promised them that I would not belabor the housekeeping. So panelists, please come off mute. Join me here live with your voices. I am so delighted to spend this hour with some of my favorite brilliant marketers, but also some of my dear friends. I'm excited to let them introduce themselves to you and share briefly who they are, what they do. But by name, I'll just ask you to wave. Ruth Glazer is our authentic brand CMO consultant representative on today's panel. Ryan Rood is the CEO and founder of Lake one of our ally provider partners. And Ben Tice is the founder and owner of Skoll Marketing, and also one of our ally network providers. So Ruth, I'll ask you to start with an intro. Ryan can follow and Ben can wrap us up.
Sure, thanks, Jen. I am an entrepreneur at heart and have experience starting my own business. And I think that leads to my passion for working with emerging companies and people who are growth-oriented environments. And right now, my most recent clients have been really focused in the e-commerce space, but I also have extensive experience in B2B, and I'm really pleased to be here talking to y'all today.
Thanks, Ruth.
Hi, everybody. It's great to meet you. So I started Lake One in 2014. We primarily support B2B organizations in manufacturing, tech, and professional services. I like to say organizations that have really gnarly sales and marketing challenges. We help them solve those challenges with technology and strategy aligned solutions. Usually we're working strategically and hands-on embedded with our partners on things like marketing automation, CRM consulting, digital advertising, web and app development, and data management and integrations. So excited to be here.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, and hey guys, I'm Ben Tice, as Jennifer said, owner and director of Skoll Marketing. We've been around for 8.5 years, and we love to create relationships to help people with digital marketing, with kind of establishing their online presence, if that's like with web development or edits on your site, going into user experience, and then more building your online presence with things like search engine optimization, search engine marketing, advertising, and social media. And so we love working with Jen and partnering with great people like Ruth and Ryan to give you guys a lot of great information. I know a lot of you guys, I'm looking at the attendee list, have attended some of our workshops, and it's great to have you back. And it's also be great to be introduced and to be in front of a lot of people I don't know. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yes, thanks everybody. Now we're going to really get diving in, and we've got a series of questions prepared that we hope are going to really provide a broad swath over the topic of demand gen, because the truth is, for every one of the questions we're going to cover today, we could have a separate webinar and go really deep. So we're hoping to paint a good picture that shows all of the pieces that have to work together, gives you good holistic lay of the land, and brings all these interesting, unique perspectives from our partners and leaders that are activating these strategies. So let me just start by saying, in the work we do at Authentic Brand with small and growing businesses, I can't tell you how many times I hear the phrase like, we need to get more at bats for our sales team. That's a really common start to an engagement conversation with a prospect. And a lot of these business leaders and revenue leaders are at the point of frustration because they've seen a lot of shiny technology demos of marketing automation that looks like it should be easy and automagical. Maybe they've put dollars toward agency services and seen leads come through that aren't qualified. They're just wondering, what are we doing wrong, right? So let's dig in. And Ben, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to lob question one your way. What big picture do you think it really takes to build a foundation for successful demand gen? If you break it down into the simple terms, what ingredients need to be part of that mix?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what we normally see a lot of times with small and even medium to large size businesses are two kind of main misconceptions or kind of mistakes. The first is that we always, because marketing does get exciting because we're like, hey, this is a shiny thing. We're going to get more at bats. We're going to get more leads to our sales teams, that a lot of times we rush it too much. We start running before we walk. And so that's where the first part is laying the foundation and laying all of these components out. And really that kind of brings me to my next point, which is, okay, what does that mean or what is that about? And really we like to kind of split that into two main type of things. One is your different demographics and what you want each of them to do. And so what I mean by that is obviously every single one of us that is listening to this have different demographics, but they're valued differently. Again, like there are different types of businesses that I'd love to work with. There are also ones that I would work with, but obviously I'm going to prioritize them differently. So a lot of times, like what we like to do is to start with businesses is to say, okay, hey, give me your top 5 to 10 clients you would want to work with, and let's prioritize them. It gives us an idea of who we can go after. And as a marketer, or even internally or externally, we start to realize, again, these are the high valued people that we want to go after. And then it gets into, again, the strategy revolving around them. Well, that brings us kind of to that second point within that second bullet that we were just kind of talking about, which is what do we want them to do? This is one that I see a lot of times people get confused on, is that, again, well, I'll ask that question to people is, well, what do you want a user to do? Or what is a conversion in your mind? Well, a lot of times I get back, well, I want a sale. And it's like, okay, great, but let's break that down a little bit. Like, how are people going to get a sale? Like if you are selling a widget on your site, well, that's really easy. But a sale, if it's more of a service, is probably going to go through different types of steps. So what does someone need to do to actually get to those steps? And also taking that further, realizing that there's sometimes if someone doesn't do exactly what you want to do with that high value of purchasing something, maybe scheduling like, hey, I want to inquire more about your services. Those are obviously very high level and high value leads. Well, there's a lot of other things that people could be doing on your site or within your marketing or engaging with your business that are value that I think a lot of people don't give credence to. And that goes with part of the foundation. So to give you an example of some of these that we could be looking at, obviously there is value in someone actually purchasing something, if that's through a website, if that's through a phone number. Also doing a demo, again, that's, again, going to have value. Filling out a contact form, maybe if it's downloading a PDF or a white paper, signing up for a newsletter. They maybe spent a certain amount of time on your site. We can actually track that obviously with different metrics. If we have a very, again, high quality white paper that's not downloaded, and we want to track how long they're actually staying on that, that might give us, again, a little bit more information of are people actually, doing what we want on the site? Maybe viewing a video or registering for an event. Really what I'm trying to get across here is that you want to set up your demographics and prioritize them, and then also realize what you want them to do kind of long-term or at the end of the goal, but then kind of backtrack and realize that there's a lot of different things that people can do to engage not only with your website, with your business as a whole, that are going to have value. And it's making sure that you have those user paths or plans of action for marketing that we can take care of all of them. Again, we're going to prioritize them. We obviously want the sales. We want probably the demos or the contact forms first, but we shouldn't negate the other ones that are there. And that's a huge misconception or a mistake that I feel like people make when they're laying that foundation.
That's great. So foundation starts with knowing who you want to matter to and how you measure whether you're mattering to them in a lot of different ways that lead up to the sale. Ryan or Ruth, do you have anything that you'd like to add in terms of what's part of the mix of the foundation?
I just add one, like beyond the, the tactical marketing elements of it, I think as we talk about revenue teams, there's a personality trait too that needs to be a key part of the foundational mix. And that's patience. I think that all of us here and those attending, especially those in the marketing seats, have had the challenge of setting the expectation for demand generation, and that it's not a switch that just gets flipped on, and that all of a sudden all of the sales problems are solved overnight. So there has to be an element of having some patience in the leadership team, that this takes time. All of those things that Ben just talked about, those things don't happen overnight, and they don't immediately work coming out of the gate. So that's patience is a critical piece of the foundation.
Thank you. And you're speaking into a piece that we're going to dive deeper on in another question, but you're right. Like if that switch existed that we could flip on and guarantee qualified leads in a certain amount of time, we would already, all of us here and many on this call, be rich and retired, wouldn't we? If it were that simple. Ruth, is there anything you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Ryan and Ben have both said. When I'm speaking with clients initially, we talk a lot about slowing down to speed up. And what I mean by that is, do we have a good grasp of who our ideal customer is? What are the characteristics that make them an ideal customer? Really understanding who we're trying to replicate and go after so that we can cast that net out there. And then also getting our brand story straight, right? What are our key differentiators? What's our brand narrative? Where are we trying to own the marketplace? So really looking at why should someone care about us? So those are a couple things sometimes that you have to spend a little bit of time on before you can even start to move into your tactical plans.
Oh, you're so right. And that's a perfect plug. If that question isn't answered for your business, you should definitely join us for April's webinar, because we're going to go into story, message. How do you get to what matters, who matters, and how do you matter to them? So thanks, Ruth. I'm going to circle right back to you again. All three of you have been leading businesses in this space around demand gen for quite some time now. So Ben, you already started to point out some of the common mistakes and misconceptions, but what are some of the most frequent assumptions, incorrect assumptions that you find that lead businesses, particularly CEOs, CFOs, heads of sales, to be frustrated in their demand gen efforts?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes down to what a lead is. And like Ben started us off with, what are we expecting someone to do? It would be great if every lead we delivered was ready to write the check and sign on the bottom line, but then we wouldn't need salespeople. It'd be so much easier, right? But that's not the reality in most sales cycles. It takes some nurturing. It takes some, connecting the dots for people and helping really to drive home the benefits to them. And so one of the things that I see people commonly do is really not have identified what are the steps in this marketing sales cycle, the customer life cycle. So what qualifies someone as a marketing lead, and then what events need to happen? What activities do they need to go through in order to be passed on to the sales team? And then once they're with the sales team, what does follow-up look like? So I have a company stands out in my mind where we had some really great lead generation going for them, and we delivered all kinds of new leads to them. And so then what you want to do is follow up and say, how are the leads? Where are they in the pipeline? How many did we close? So we can continue to refine that. Well, as we had that conversation with their leadership team and their sales team, we found that the follow-up had consisted only of the salespeople sending an email, basically saying, let me know if you have any questions. So we could deliver all the leads in the world, but if the sales process isn't aligned with that and there aren't clear steps on what should happen next, no amount of lead generation is going to fix that. And then another thing that sort of goes hand in hand with that is valuing the leads themselves. So really understanding, what does each lead mean to us? Another example that comes to mind is a company that we worked with, and everybody always wants more leads, right? More leads are great. And so we did a little digging into, okay, well, what's the disposition of these leads? And it turned out that one of them ended up in a sale. And so it was only one sale, but that sale was worth $500,000 annually. So it represented a significant portion of their revenue, and the ROI on that was fantastic. So really understanding, okay, what do we want? What value are we placing on this lead? And then how much do we need to invest in order to hit our revenue goals based on that?
Oh, that's fantastic. Ryan, I have heard you speak with our clients before about service level agreements between sales and marketing, SLAs. This might be a new concept for some on this call. Can you give us a little perspective on how you've seen that agreement and conversation help smooth things out?
Yeah, I mean, it solves a lot of the problems that Ruth is talking about. It gets the revenue teams together to say, what is the terminology that we're agreeing to around a lead? Get everybody speaking the same language, because sales may think an MQL is something completely different than marketing does. And then going further and saying, okay, if marketing is giving you a lead sales, these are the things we're expecting you to do as follow-up. And this is what marketing is going to do to get the leads in the pipeline for you. It's basically just putting the two down across from each other at a table and saying, I'll do this if you agree to do this, and then let's come back together. We try to encourage at a minimum monthly. Some of the best teams do this weekly, where sales and marketing come back together and have feedback meetings weekly to say, here's how it's working. Here's what's happening in real time, knowing that no plan survives first contact with the enemy. So the SLA is really just designed to say, this is what we agree to. Now let's put it into practice, and every week come back together and say, here's what we're seeing from our side. Here's what we're seeing from our side. How do we work and advance this forward as a team, as a unified team?
And you just brought to surface so many sub themes that could be their own webinars in terms of sales and marketing alignment, formal feedback loops, partnership pointing in the same direction, having common goals, common language, common expectations, and accountability between the teams. We don't have this in script today, but I'm taking some mental notes about future conversations we might have on these particular deeper dives. But Ryan, I'm going to tee this next question back to you again. We've started to touch into this, and I see some questions already coming in the Q&A, like, well, then how long will this take, right? You ask us to be patient. How long is it? Let's talk about expectations on conversion. What needs to happen to define lead quality? And then how long should a company expect it will take from the beginning of, like, we've started creating some content and we're looking to create leads, to we finally have a viable prospects coming through and revenue? What's that look like?
Awesome question. So the first piece of it that I say is the alignment needs to happen in terms of lead quality. In order to get to lead quality, it's a result of the alignment, because you can't define a quality lead if everybody is not in agreement on what in the heck is a quality lead. So alignment has to happen in order to be able to actually get to what is a quality conversion and what does that conversion look like. And conversion can take all sorts of forms, like Ben said at the opening. From that kind of going forward, as far as what does timeline through the funnel look like, that can vary across all sorts of businesses. I mean, some businesses have really quick funnels, some have really, really long ones. But in terms of that first conversion, that kind of comes down to channel. So if you're just creating some content, you're putting it out there, organically, and then do nothing with it, it's probably going to take you a really long time, frankly. I push our team really hard to put more energy and effort, not just into the content creation, but into thinking about content promotion. And then at that point, it comes down to channel. Whether you're doing paid to promote it and support it, that's a way to grease the wheels really fast to start seeing, can we get some conversions? Our thoughts and our initial thinking from a strategy perspective accurate, measured against what that lead definition is that everybody said. So when I say be patient, that's not to say nothing's going to happen. If you're coming at this from a strategic perspective where everybody agrees on what a lead is, you have some research and some strategy behind the content, and you have a mix that promotes it quickly, you can get things moving through the funnel really rapidly. And Ben's probably going to kill me when I say this, is you can throw some pay-per-click behind it if you want to start getting some really fast traffic behind it, to be able to at least test those assumptions. So I'm not saying, by no means am I saying be patient. In other words, or just sit there and twiddle your thumbs waiting for, an agency partner to bring the heat. You can get things moving really fast. It really comes down to channel at that point. But the first piece is you have to have lead quality and definition up front. Otherwise, the conversions aren't going to matter. And I've said this to clients for years and years and years, and I've said this in-house as a marketer. If you just want conversions, I can get you some really cheap traffic, but it's not going to matter. Like,
I think a lot of our attendees have been there. They've heard agencies promise, I can get you X quantities of leads by this date, right?
Right.
And they're really frustrated that those leads don't align at all. And now they've wasted a ton of
Totally.
follow-up sales effort to try to qualify them. And now they're
So
spending
let
even
me,
more money.
exactly. So let me give you an example of this on the organic side from a content perspective. And this is something that I think a lot, especially emerging marketers or marketers that maybe don't fully understand the search side of things,
Yeah.
have a hard time wrapping their head around is if we do keyword research, why would we go down here where there's something that maybe only has 10 or 50 searches from an organic perspective when there's searches up here for a phrase that has thousands and thousands, but it's a really broad term. When you go down here to something that's really specific and really targeted to your demographic, to your buyer, to your persona, do you care if it's only 50 searches, if those 50 searches have a high propensity to buy from you? And especially if you have a high value, high priced item, if you have a 6-figure, 7-figure product or service, you probably only need 2 or 3 of those to convert to all of a sudden make your whole marketing program pay for itself and then some. So that's where it's the quantity over quality, or the quality over quantity.
Yeah. Ben or Ruth, any thoughts on this topic? Ben.
Yeah. So, honestly, I really second, and actually, Ryan, no, I agree that, again, SEO, or excuse me, SEM can be a quicker way to kind of get there. I'll actually talk about that a little bit later here. But I think, again, going off of what Ryan's kind of been talking about is, when we ask for a timeline, it is kind of hard. And again, I hate sometimes, again, being on webinars myself when we kind of have vague answers, but it's also being realistic that, we have 90 people on here right now, and it's kind of talking every single, industry and every single marketing effort or strategy should be different and is going to be different because we have different demographics and things like that. So a couple of things that I like to kind of tell people that when we're talking about timelines is to reiterate what Ryan was saying is that it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have to say it's going to take 6 months to get a lead. Now, again, depending on what you're selling, if I'm selling this pen, obviously again, the lead cycle to get again, or the sales cycle on this pen is going to be a lot different than if I'm selling a house. And so it's also realizing kind of, again, within there. And so if we break down some of those timelines, a lot of times what we start with is if we don't have a foundation that we talked about here, if we don't have a plan, then we have to start somewhere and start kind of doing that. A lot of times that is going to take a few months, depending on how maybe disorganized or, again, the different departments, it is going to take months for that. But like what Ryan said too, and I love what, again, you said earlier, Ryan, is that no matter what you're doing, you should still be getting a value. And this is what we try to preach to a lot of our clients is that just because we're not at the highest ROI that we're going to be, maybe 6 months, 12 months down the road, we still should be seeing a value. Anything you're doing right now should still at least be getting a value. If that is, honing on your market research, finding some things that maybe don't work to kind of get a better ROI, finding out which, where your specific demographics are on the different channels that we've been talking about, the different marketing kind of things. So sometimes it is like, okay, yes, I know the long-term goal is to get sales, but sometimes, as Ruth said, we have to slow down to speed up to make sure that we can kind of catapult or slingshot ourselves for there. So unfortunately, there's not an exact time. Now, again, if we went through all 90 participants and we were talking about your specific, again, marketing strategy or what you're selling, again, then we can give you some more timelines. We have some clients that within 30 days we're going. We have some that it's within a year and it gets going. Again, it all depends on so many factors with your foundation, with your demographic, with your conversion and your sales and marketing teams.
Yes. And if I may steal 30 seconds of thunder here to share a little bit from our own personal case study at Authentic Brand and give you a little bit of nuance on why these things have an it depends. Like a lot of our conversation today is focused on B2B marketing, which is very different than B2C marketing to sell a pen, which is very straight line. I Google for what I need, I find it, I purchase it, easy decision, one person making it. B2B sales are very different. We're in B2B professional services. We're a 4-year-old company. We've been creating content since the very beginning of time. We have 4 years of organic, rich, deep blog content, and we've done some other marketing things, and we've had 4 years of selling and getting to know our audience, right? So I have metrics that tell me, based on a referral that comes to our business, which is a highly qualified right now need, what that conversion looks like in my pipeline, right? But this is the year that at Authentic Brand, we're turning on some of these other mechanisms now. We have a strong foundation. We know our audience. We know our story. We're turning on some paid media. We're turning on some digital nurturing campaigns. We're getting some other activation going with some of the partners on this very call. And my expectations as a marketer and business owner start with the understanding that the best time to plant a tree is 5 years ago. Okay. This is seed planting. And I've been planting seeds. We've been planting seeds for 4 years to create the kind of content that if you land on our site, we hope will be sticky. And then now we get to amplify all of that effort. And I have ROI calculations based on our pipeline data that tell me that between 12 and 24 months from when we start to invest is when I'm going to see revenue. Okay. So my level of patience is this could take 2 years of learning and tweaking and fine tuning before it's dollars back in my business. But when those dollars start coming in, they're very meaningful, very highly qualified, right? So that's just a little bit of perspective, Mary, to try to answer your question. How long do you stay patient with your agency partners? It depends. How much time do you need to build the foundation that gives something somewhere to come to and land and be sticky and engaged? So that's my next question. And Ben, this is coming back to you. I have seen this happen time and time again, that a lot of business leaders, they're struggling. They've been a sales-driven organization. They've got a great product or service, and now they want to amplify that. And we're going to turn on that marketing switch and start lead gen because we hear that's what we need to do next. So they think we need to get the technology, we need to get an agency partner, and we need to throw paid dollars to get the media going, and this will open the pipeline. But what they don't understand is that how much content is required to fuel these programs, to give that engaged person something to look at, to get to know your brand. So we know, those of us here, that doing digital well and demand gen well requires a ton of content. There's nothing automagical about it. And that piece of it can be really hard to just outsource, right? So share with us, Ben, and then others chime in. How have you seen organizations be successful in striking the balance between paid media and amplification and their owned media, their own blogs, videos, white papers, branded thought leadership? Like, what's that look like? How do you get that right?
Yeah, and what's kind of nice is we've kind of, again, done a little previews or little tidbits already throughout this workshop, kind of alluding to some of these things, and I'll kind of pull back some of that kind of stuff. But really what it comes down to is you absolutely need a balance, but you ultimately should be doing both or all of the above, again, as we get going. Now, again, being realistic that if we're a smaller business, if we maybe have some apprehensiveness, again, inside a business for it, we obviously have to be strategic on potentially how we lay it out. A lot of times the best strategy isn't just to, like Jennifer said, flip a switch. Let's just start, pouring hundreds or thousands of dollars at SEM just so we can pat ourselves on the back and say we got this many clicks. Again, going back to what Ruth was talking about, is it's quality over quantity. And so really when we look at this is it's also kind of understanding sometimes how the system works, or again, kind of setting up kind of the plan. Again, at the end of the day, we want both owned media and paid media. I will say the best long-term benefit, and Jen, you kind of talked about this with Authentic Brand, is going to be owned media. Now, owned media is essentially like owning your own real estate instead of renting it, like what is like paid or SEM from Google or Bing or wherever we're kind of running ads, social media, and all that kind of stuff. So this is going to be a much better long-term effect. Really, at the end of the day, what you're doing from a brand perspective and from a, again, online perspective is you're trying to cement yourself as an industry expert. And how you do that is by creating content so that Google and search engines know that. When, again, you obviously can use social media to help influence that. And people can also kind of be able to see that as well. So a lot of times what we tell people is that obviously depending on sometimes the eagerness or being realistic about timelines is you really actually want to start building your foundation with owned media, knowing that it's probably going to take 3, 6, 9, 12, 18 months, 4 years to start to kind of see some of those benefits. It is going to be dependent on your, again, your competition. Your strategy. Ryan brought up a fantastic strategy that we a lot of times use with clients that, again, wouldn't you maybe want to be number one for the 20 searches every single month for this word, instead of trying to fight 100 people to be one of the top 10 on the first page for something that's searched 1,000 times? And so it's kind of being more strategic about that, and we can also look at low-hanging fruit. Again, if we have lower competition for certain words, we can obviously get people in there. But really what it comes down to is, again, laying that foundation with owned media, creating enough content. Now, again, enough is going to be dependent on your industry, on your demographic, on your services, on your competition. So it's going to have to come up with building that foundation and building that plan. But what's also really kind of nice is when we start to add paid media or SEM or social media advertising and stuff like that, is what I like to kind of tell people is here's the philosophical difference a lot of times between the two is that paid is going to be something that's very quick and, again, can be much more maneuverable. So a lot of times what we want to do is we want to build owned media with a lot of our core services. And obviously we all do a lot of those other types of services that are kind of in between. Well, paid can be a great way to kind of be an auxiliary benefit or kind of just enhance upon it. But really what we're looking for is long-term, you want your own media equity to kind of grow so that we can either, again, potentially lower, again, paid SEM, or again, be much more maneuverable with it and try different types of lower priority services or things like that. They feed off of each other as well. I think that's another misconception too, is that the reason you want to do both is they feed so well off of each other. The other thing too is sometimes I will get people that say, well, Ben, why would I do SEM ads? Because I never click on ads. I don't even click on ads in social. I don't click on ads here. And I say, okay, that's great for you. But you're also missing the point that the reason these platforms are around is because they work. And again, we've literally been able to do case studies and kind of show this. And if you think about it, makes sense is, let's just use Google Ads for an example, but there's obviously other ones out there, is when someone, decides to click on an ad on Google, when someone does a search for plumber in Minnesota, hypothetically. Well, again, they didn't scroll down to see the organic. They didn't go onto social media and kind of see it. So you would have missed that opportunity if you weren't even in the game for it. And that's just, again, a one small, again, kind of example, but really the thing, if you want to take away from this, from my opinion, is to lay the foundation to your whole strategy with this, with owned media, and then start building on top of that, and then using paid media to really kind of just be, again, a supplemental kind of factor to it. Now, again, the one caveat is what Ryan brought up, is that sometimes speed can be a factor, and you may have to do SEM first to start getting going with stuff and then kind of peel it back.
Awesome. This is yet another webinar we could go deep on, is paid, earned, owned, shared media. There's a lot to unpack here. Thank you for that. We're going to buy back a little bit of time with these last two formal panel questions. So Ryan, I'm going to jump right in with yours, and I'm going to say, let's try to keep like 4 minutes for the next couple, so we've got some time for audience Q&A. Some smart questions are coming in. Let me remind you, attendees, drop your questions please into the Q&A, rather into the group chat. That will help us to sort them through from just comments. So if you threw a question into chat, bring it on over to Q&A so we can look at it there too. So Ryan, one of the most common conversations, and you and I have talked at length about this, that I have with business owners, I often talk with CEOs and CFOs who say, listen, I actually have an unlimited marketing budget. If you can just tell me for every dollar that I put in at the top of this machine, how many dollars will I get out the bottom and how fast? Right? And then I'll just keep reinvesting. Again, if that was just a formula, we'd all be like on a beach somewhere right now, not here freezing our butts off in Minnesota. But here we are, so let's discuss. How do you answer that question? How do you help advise business leaders to think about investment and return? And I think part of this answer is kind of circles back to where we started this conversation, that sometimes the return on investment's not just revenue. There are other things being influenced. But how would you answer that? You're on mute, my dear. Let's get you off mute.
I swear that when the pandemic is over, it's all going to be like boiled down to one phrase: you're on mute. Literally what it so yeah, I think elements of this has already kind of been answered. It has to start with, what is the value of the lead to be able to start to do some of those formulations. For us, we always try, when we engage with a client very early on, is to start having KPI discussions that get as close to the revenue as possible. And a lot of organizations sometimes get really uncomfortable when the marketing partner or the marketing agency is asking these questions. And we're not doing it because, like, I want, to look behind the curtain and like get all of your business secrets. I'm doing it because as a marketing partner, I want to help you get to the ROI calculation. I don't want to be giving you stupid reports on clicks and views and impressions that mean nothing, because at the executive level, that I want to gouge my eyes out when I see reports like that. The vanity metrics are the dumbest ones on earth. But if there are no benchmarks, if your business doesn't have the ability to say, this is what it means, this is what the value of a lead is, this is what our sales cycle is like, you still have to start somewhere with some best guess estimates and start to try to build an ROI formula and keep it simple. It doesn't need to be, 6 different attribution models, a W, a U, a first click, a last click. Just keep it simple. Somebody came into a website sourced by marketing. Did they convert to the revenue? What was the revenue? I mean, it's very basic arithmetic, but that's the way I try to approach it. And I think sometimes, especially when I'm having that conversation similar to you, Jen, with CEOs and CFOs, it's like, is it really that simple? Because I feel like marketing has been trying to make it really complicated. It is that simple. So, and I think Ruth also has some good thoughts on this too. It's sitting from the kind of the CMO seat too with several clients.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I think the ROI question sometimes can be premature, and there is an investment required sometimes to create some assets. If you think about it, like if you're setting up manufacturing, you've got to invest in that manufacturing line, and then you start to amortize that cost over time. Well, the same is true in marketing. And I think, Jen, your example a couple questions ago was just something I've seen over and over again, which is what I call hockey stick growth, right? You're chugging along for a few years, and then you finally get that traction and you start to see the growth really accelerate. So I like to think when you're creating those assets and that content initially, if done well and done right, it's going to deliver day after day, month after month, year after year. So you're really creating an annuity. You're investing in an annuity that's going to enable you to run campaigns, enable you to do some of these different tactics to start generating some of those leads. But that's not the starting point. And that's sometimes the hard thing to understand is you've got to build that foundation and invest in that foundation first.
That's awesome, Ruth. Ben, I think you had something you wanted to add on this.
Yeah, I just want to quickly add to kind of both of those. Where I'd kind of like put that and kind of say that is, I think a lot of times people come to, CMOs, digital marketers, and they're thinking that it's a digital marketing, or let's just say marketing. They're thinking it's a marketing product that we're buying. You're buying a marketing process that, again, everybody's is going to be different. It's not just a product that we can, again, yes, I've been doing this for years. Ryan's been doing this for years, and Ruth has been doing this for years, but everybody is different. I think sometimes that is, again, something that I like to try to teach people is that, again, it's not just a marketing product and it's just out of the box and we get it and we flip a switch. It's a marketing process that we have to go through and that we know and that we can offer expertise with that, or you can do internally too.
Super helpful. Well, we have just a few more minutes and I want to flip this last question back to you, Ruth, because it's a perfect segue from your concept of building annuities. That was beautiful. And I would love for you to write a blog on that. That was great. But on that point, I see a lot of growing businesses have an imbalance in the way that they think about investment in their marketing programs. They think about marketing simply as top of the funnel, create leads, demand gen, and sales as closing and account management and customer retention and account growth. But really, marketing and the assets that you create as part of your owned content in that universe can be leveraged into customer retention expansion. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that investment that powers our demand gen can also power and reinforce retention and advocacy downstream?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've done like Ryan suggested, and you've got this well integrated kind of flywheel with sales, marketing, customer service, you're all feeding each other and leveraging learnings and knowledge in those different areas. So I think a great example when you're looking at content is really to think holistically, not just about one specific piece and where it might be used, but how that might be used throughout a campaign. And I love the example of a webinar, for instance. So we're recording this webinar, and you might take the deck, the outline, and create a blog from that and optimize it for those keywords. Now you're starting to attract people. You may then ask for their email address so that you can send them the recording. So now you're nurturing and you're moving them through the funnel a little bit. And then down the line, a salesperson might be on the phone with another contact, and they say, oh, you know what, we did a webinar last quarter that I think you might really be interested in. So now it becomes the sales enablement piece that they can send the recording to a prospect. So really working that whole life cycle off of one concept of a webinar. Another example, I love, there's a great company called DataBox, and what they do is they aggregate metrics from a variety of different sources, and they create these beautiful dashboards so you can see how your business is doing. Well, their customer service works with their clients to create these dashboards. They then take those and make them templates, which they make available on their website. So I saw a tweet last week from their president that said, top 100 marketing dashboard templates. And so of course I went there. So this marketing content that got me to their website originated from the customer service team working with a client to implement their solution. So being very creative and holistic about, hey, this content works in this area, but we can repurpose it and use it in this area as well.
Brilliant. That's how you stretch your resources and you get more bang for your buck. We are now right on time for the audience Q&A portion, and there are so many directions we can go with this. I did hear from one attendee that the Q&A wasn't working for her, and so we've captured a couple questions right in the chat that I think are super great questions, because we actually hear these quite a bit from our clients. So I want to throw this out to the team. First one, KPIs. We hear a lot about KPIs, metrics, insights, analytics, data, and how do we know what's working, what's not working, and ultimately ROI. So the question here is, what do you find to be the most effective type of KPI to measure? We've heard about customer lifetime value, customer acquisition cost. There are other things that can be measured. How would you weigh in on that? And let's contextualize that within a B2B framework.
Go for it.
Just jumping in. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. So I was going to say I will just preface it by saying, obviously it is going to be a little bit different in understanding what our conversion is. But a lot of times, again, like we are looking at actually both of those as two huge ones, the LTV of what that value is going to be. And I think like this person actually, or Jen, if you put that in there, is I think the LTV is one of the most important ones to kind of look at, because sometimes we do, again, like within companies and whatnot, we get a little bit of short-sighted that, oh, again, we got that sale. But again, like if we know what the LTV of that person is, that long-term value, that lifetime value of that client, obviously that's going to be, again, going back to prioritizing our different conversions or prioritizing our different demographics, it's going to help kind of with that. Also then balancing that with the customer acquisition cost. It's kind of obviously just like most things in marketing, it's finding that sweet spot of being able to, again, it comes back to ROI. So I think it's a matter of kind of balancing both of them. But really, I think that before you can really even answer that and just start throwing out, oh, well, it has to be LTV, it has to be client acquisition cost, you have to get the plan down and start prioritizing your conversions first, and then start putting some values to those. And we even work with clients where we almost put an arbitrary value, and you can do that within, so many metric systems, that if there's not an actual sale, we can actually start to put some type of value there, so we can start to even measure those things that aren't, again, in the moment. Like if someone downloaded a PDF, you could, again, attribute some type of value to that, so you can at least start to, again, calculate some of those other things.
Yeah, I go ahead. No,
well, I was just going to say lifetime value is a great metric, I think, because you're looking at the long-term value of that customer. But the other one that I think is often overlooked in B2B, especially in complex sales environments, is speed of sale. So if marketing can help to reduce the sales cycle, there should be a value placed on that, right? And that's what good marketing can do. So that's another one, like I say, it's often overlooked, but I think a really valuable one to take a look at.
Ryan, did you want to chime in real quick on that?
Ruth took my answer.
We're going to roll to the next question. We talked quite a bit already today about patience and expectation and how long it can take depending on your model, your pipeline, the velocity, all of those things. But Mary asked a question about how long should one be patient with their marketing firm or their agency when looking for sales results? What does that mean? 60 days, 6 months, 6 years? I hear all the time companies saying we're going to give this agency a 90-day trial. Talk with me a little bit about how you manage and navigate this. I'm asking this of Ben and Ryan, that conversation with would-be clients. How do you help set their expectations? And then also, how can a client know when they're working with an agency that really doesn't get it and isn't doing things that are going to be helpful to their business?
Yeah, so for me, it's really important early on with the client that you have, like I said before, KPI discussions, and that you understand together on both sides what you're working towards, what success looks like, but also understanding that at the end of the goal line here obviously is revenue, but to Ben's point, marketing is a process, not a product, and that in order to get to that goal line of sales or goal line of revenue, there's going to be some iteration along the way to figure that out. Jen, I think your comment about 4 years of content development and looking at metrics and putting together an ROI model for paid media that's looking at a return in 2 years is spot on. And that's not to say that every business takes that long, but it's an understanding between client and agency that it's a relationship and there should be honesty in that relationship. And if there is not, and you are not having conversations on the agency side or on the client side about metrics, what is happening, what is working, what is not working, how you are progressing towards that goal together, ditch them. Because to me, it's not about, do we wait 60 days? Do we wait 6 months? Do we wait 6 years? It's about, do I have a partnership with somebody that I believe in that is helping me move the needle towards the goal? Because it is a process, it's not a product. So that's my approach to it. Ben, I don't know if you have other thoughts, but.
No, honestly, like I would just kind of reiterate some of what you're kind of talking about in that, again, another kind of key indicator that we've had people come to us that have been upset with other clients too is, again, like within the digital agency, it's when a digital agency treats marketing like a product, really it's the same thing over and over again. And you start seeing, hey, I can guarantee you this, I can guarantee you this. No one should really say that. The only thing we can really guarantee is that honestly, we should be able to see improvement, or you should be able to see work, but it comes down to critical thinking and communication. So again, going to that question, can I get you leads within 30 to 60 days? Yes, but it's going to depend on, do we have the foundation already set? When are we coming in? Are you selling a pen or a house? Again, there's so many different kind of factors in there. And then the other thing too is a lot of times that we work with our clients on is understanding, again, the best part about this is digital marketing should only, the leads and everything that goes with it should only get better and better as we go along. Again, I might be able to get you, the leads in 30 to 60 days, but we're also going to say, hey, that's just setting that benchmark, and we're only going to get better and better as we go along. So kind of reiterating what Ryan's saying is it has to be a relationship. But what I would just say is, again, how you sometimes can tell when it's a product, not a process, is when we start hearing things of just guaranteeing and just hitting numbers just to hit numbers. Again, it doesn't matter, again, if we're just hitting those, we really need to look at, again, the LTV, look at the client acquisition. Ruth made a fantastic point about, again, the speed of it, and like pretty much it's the opportunity cost of, again, all those, and bringing all that value to kind of gather and have that critical thinking to be able to push it forward.
That's right. So if you're hearing of would-be or a current agency partner, just guarantee vanity and engagement metrics, but wash their hands of any responsibility to work with you on what that means in terms of impact to your business, run away. And also, if you as the customer are approaching an agency with an expectation that we're just going to give you our money and we expect you to give us sales back, you're not ready and you're not in the right mindset, and that agency should run away from you, because this will need to be, it needs to be a partnership where you're invested and willing to be transparent, to share learnings back and forth, to have that depth of conversation, and be willing to adapt what you're learning and let it change your organization, let it change how you approach the customer experience in that journey, right? So it has to come both directions. So thank you for that honest perspective. Okay, we've got a couple other minutes here. There's a couple other questions coming in. One that came in through our chat that didn't get to the Q&A, but I think it's really relevant and interesting, was a question about gating content. So forcing viewers of your website to give you their information before they can access content, whether that's an email address or more. This person's like, I hate gated content. We all hate running into gates, right? But when is it appropriate and valuable? Where should it be used and where should it not be used? Help us out. Ryan, I'm gonna pick on you first.
Yeah, I saw that question come into the chat. I saw it out of the corner of my eyes. I was hoping it would get surfaced.
Here you are.
So I totally agree. I think that the problem is that why people hate gated content now is, and this is coming from a HubSpot solution partner. So I'm blaming HubSpot for this because inbound marketing came blasting onto the scene like 10 years ago, and everybody's like, oh, put a gate up, we get all these email addresses. And then all of a sudden people were like, what? I gave up all my information and I got this crappy piece of content. That's the problem. So you've got to marry the value of what you're giving to why you're asking for an email address. And I honestly think that's the biggest problem, is that people are still putting up crappy content and then expecting people to be stupid and be like, oh, I'm going to fill out all of these forms and then get like a one-page thing that was basically like plagiarized off of somebody else's website. And it's like, I've seen this piece of content 20 times. What I will say is that there are some really cool tools and technology out there now that are making it easier to provide gated content and make it easier on the user. Like Clearbit, Zoom Info makes it where there's third-party data that will connect lead data to it. So all you literally have to ask is email address and that's it. Like, don't make it laborious, but if you have high value content, like I presume and I hope that Authentic Brand is going to gate the evergreen version of this webinar.
Yes, we will.
Good. A gate is worthwhile because at the end of the day, it's still one of the major mechanisms for which you can make a website, turn it into a lead machine, because people don't really like filling out contact us forms either, because then they feel like sales is going to be harassing them nonstop. So that's my thought.
That was brilliant. I don't think there's much that we can add to that truth bomb. Thank you for that. And thank you for the person who asked about gates. I think all of you have shared so many wonderful, valuable little nuggets of wisdom today that I hope that everybody who's on this webinar feels it was worthwhile to share your email address to get here today. And we absolutely will put a gate on it if anybody else wants access to all this wisdom. So with that, we always want to end on time because we don't want to erode the trust of our visitors. I know there are questions in the audience we didn't get to today. We are still here for you even when this event wraps up. All of you have Monica's email in your inbox as a confirmation on today's event and with your invitation. If you would like to get in touch with any of our panelists with specific questions, just reach out to us. We would love to put you directly in touch. And I know that all of our panelists would be thrilled to be a resource for you. And Ben, thank you for dropping your email address out publicly. You are a brave soul. If anyone wants to do the same, please do. This is your moment. So we are now at the wrap part of the meeting, and I want to just mention a couple quick things. My utmost love, thanks, appreciation, and gratitude to all of you brilliant panelists. I'm just so grateful that you are part of our Authentic Brand circle and community. And I love the work you're all doing for our clients and friends, and you are all game changers in this space of marketing. And I'm grateful to know you and learn from you. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you to my production team here at Authentic Brand who makes all of this possible. It's a simple Zoom meeting, but there's nothing simple about getting this all pulled together. So especially to Monica sitting off in the wings here, thank you for that. Thank you to all of you who were here with us today live and those who registered to watch later. We appreciate you and the opportunity to be part of your circle as well. Finally, don't forget to register for our next event coming up in April, where we'll have a couple of our CMOs and another of our brilliant allies on the webinar to talk about messaging moments in your business as you evolve. Monica will make sure you get that invitation coming really soon with this recap. And finally, as this event closes at the top of the hour on time, we ask you just to take that brief moment, 5 seconds, answer 3 quick questions, give us feedback. And if you've got specific feedback about what you learned today or what you would like to learn in a future growth webinar, growth marketing webinar, please email Monica. We're going to take all of those requests very seriously as we map out the content for the coming months ahead. So have a wonderful, beautiful, brilliant afternoon. Blessings on all of your marketing teams and programs and results and KPIs and ROIs and demand gen efforts. We're so grateful to be here with you. Thanks so much, Ruth, Ryan, and Ben. Really appreciate you guys.
Thanks, guys. Cool.